All right, welcome in everybody to the deep dive. We're headed to Greenwood, Indiana today.
Oh, Greenwood.
Yeah, Greenwood, just south of Indianapolis,
Okay, yeah.
If you're picturing like a small town, think again because
Right.
we're talking 51,000 people, busy I-65 running right through it, historic Main Street with all those brick buildings.
Oh, wow. So it's got that classic small town charm, but
Yeah,
it's bustling.
bustling, exactly. And the date we're looking at is March 25th, 2025.
Okay.
Now, why are we here? Well, the commercial real estate scene in Greenwood, it's hot.
Hot.
Right. 4.2 million square feet of leasable space, to be a little more specific. That includes, by the way, Greenwood Park Mall, the big one,
Right.
and even the industrial areas like South Tech Park. So we're talking all kinds of businesses here.
Got it.
So whether you're thinking about opening a small law firm, a craft brewery,
Right.
maybe even a big logistics center, you've got to understand commercial leases in Greenwood.
Yeah, makes sense. Leases are the foundation, right?
Absolutely. That's what this deep dive is all about.
Right.
Giving you the inside scoop so you can navigate this market like a pro.
Love it.
And to help us do that, we have the best possible guide, Cara Conde. She's been working in real estate in the Indianapolis area for 23 years, and she is considered the top commercial real estate agent in Greenwood.
Wow.
She's worked with everyone from tiny startups to Fortune 500 companies.
That's a wealth of experience.
It really is. So buckle up, because we're about to break down Greenwood's commercial leases and get you ready to make smart decisions.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first. Greenwood, Indiana, what's the big picture here?
Yeah.
Cara actually calls it a commercial crucible.
Crucible, interesting.
It is, right? But when you look at it, you see why. Location, location, location. I-65 runs right through it. You're 20 minutes from Indianapolis to the north,
Okay.
and it connects down to Louisville to the south. And then you've got easy access to I-69 and I-70 through the Indianapolis Beltway.
So strategically located, logistically speaking, that's huge for businesses.
It's massive. Now, let's look at the economic side, specifically in 2025.
All right.
Population, 51,300. That's a 2% jump since 2020. Median household income, $71,000.
Okay.
That's 12% above the Indiana average. And then you've got the potential workforce of the Indianapolis metro area, which is huge, 1.8 million people.
So a growing population, strong incomes.
Yeah.
And a big pool of potential employees. Sound like a good place to do business.
It really does. And that's reflected in the commercial real estate activity. At the beginning of 2025, Greenwood had about 4.2 million square feet of commercial space across 68 active listings. The vacancy rate, only 5.8%.
Wow. So less than 6% vacancy in a market that size.
Yeah.
That definitely says something. It means spaces are filling up fast.
Exactly. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We're going to break down the market by sector.
Okay, good. Sectors are key to understanding the nuances.
Totally. So first up, retail. And this is where Greenwood Park Mall really dominates.
Right. It's the anchor. Right.
It is 1.2 million square feet, over 130 stores, 10.5 million visitors a year.
That's massive. That's got to be driving a lot of other retail activity around it.
Oh, for sure. You see that along US 31 and Main Street. And there you've got a really good mix of national chains like Target and Starbucks.
Familiar names.
Yes, but also local businesses. So, like craft bakeries and boutique fitness studios. And the retail vacancy rate is even lower there, just 4.2%.
Wow. Shows how desirable those locations are.
Definitely. Now let's shift gears to industrial. This sector is really on the rise in Greenwood. And you know what's fueling it? Proximity.
Proximity, huh? To what?
To major shipping hubs. FedEx Indy Hub is just 15 miles away. UPS Plainfield facility is about 25 miles. So Greenwood is in a prime spot for logistics.
Location is everything for those kinds of businesses.
Totally. Areas like South Tech Park and Worthville Road, those are the industrial hotspots. They got about 1.5 million square feet of industrial space. And demand has, hypothetically speaking, of course,
Yeah.
gone up by 18% since 2022.
So the rise of e-commerce, that's got to be a big factor in that demand, right? It's huge. Now let's talk offices. Offices are evolving. Co-working spaces, flexible suites.
Right. The way people work is changing, so offices are adapting.
Exactly. You're seeing more demand for spaces from, say, 500 to 2,000 square feet for co-working, and then 1,000 to 10,000 square feet for those flexible suites.
Okay.
So there's about 800,000 square feet of office space in Greenwood. And in 2024, occupancy for Class A offices, the top tier ones,
Right.
was at 92%.
That's really healthy. Shows that demand for high-quality office space is still strong.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's break Greenwood down into those micro markets because that's where you really see the differences.
Absolutely. Getting granular is important.
Totally. So first up, South Tech Park. If you're looking for industrial space, this is your place. Warehouses, 5,000 to 60,000 square feet, mostly Class B and C.
Okay.
Leases run between $14.50 and $18 per square foot.
Not bad.
And there are flex spaces with those higher ceilings, like 12 to 16 feet. Think logistics companies, CNC machinists. Those are the typical tenants there.
Right, right. And another thing, minimal flood risk. The elevation's 810 feet.
Okay, so that's a big consideration, especially for industrial businesses that need to protect their inventory.
It's huge. Now let's go over to Copy Chase, which is the retail hub off Emerson Avenue.
Okay, so this is more your score fronts and such.
Exactly. You're looking at spaces from 1,000 to 12,000 square feet. Lease rates are a little higher here, $20 to $24 per square foot. But you've got over 300 parking spaces, and get this, 15,000 vehicles passing by each day.
Wow.
So your typical mix of restaurants, salons, pet stores, all zoned C2, which is for commercial use.
Right, makes sense.
Now on to Indiana American Office Park. This is where you find your Class A and B office buildings.
Okay, more professional settings.
Exactly. Suites range from 500 to 6,000 square feet. Leases are $19 to $22.50 square foot.
All right.
Fiber optic internet, good parking ratio, 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet.
Standard.
Yep. You'll find CPAs, tech startups, that kind of tenant. And a nice bonus. It's a bit quieter, being set back from I-65. Peaceful. Last but not least, we have the Rise Commercial District.
Rise, what's that all about?
Rise is the newer kid on the block. Mixed-use flex spaces.
Okay, getting more into that modern approach.
Totally. Spaces from 1,200 to 18,000 square feet. Leases are $18 to $21 per square foot.
Not bad.
And they often have those 14-foot roll-up doors, and the roofs are ready for solar panels.
So appealing to a wider range of businesses, right?
Oh yeah, breweries, co-working spaces, they love Rise.
Interesting.
Now, here's a key takeaway for you. Lease rates in Greenwood, on average, $18 to $23 per square foot.
Okay.
That's more affordable than Indianapolis, where you might pay $25 to $30.
So Greenwood is giving you that affordability advantage without sacrificing access to a major metro area.
Exactly. All right, we set the scene. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of these commercial leases in Greenwood.
Let's do it.
Cara stresses this. Leases here are not cookie cutter.
Yeah, I was going to say commercial leases, they can be a whole different beast.
Right. They are tailored, really specific to the property, the landlord's goals, and how much negotiating power you, the tenant, have.
So you really got to know what you're looking at.
You do. So let's break down the main types of leases you might encounter. First up, triple net, also known as NNN.
NNN. Okay.
This means you pay base rent, plus you cover your share of the property taxes, insurance, and maintenance.
Okay, so it's not just the rent itself. There are these additional costs.
Right. And those extra costs, they can add up. Cara says think $3 to $5 per square foot on top of that base rent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so let's say you have a 3,000 square foot shop, base rent is $18, and NNN charges are $4 per square foot. You're looking at $66,000 per year.
It all adds up.
It does. And these NNN leases, they're common for single-tenant retail properties. But here's a heads up. Property taxes can go up. In 2024, they went up about 5%.
So that's something to keep an eye on.
For sure. And when they say your share, they mean a percentage based on how much space you rented compared to the whole building.
Pro rata share.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, for a new business, especially if cash flow is tight, the unpredictable nature of maintenance costs with an NNN lease can be a bit risky.
Because unlike a gross lease where everything's included, you have to factor in those potential repair costs.
You do. Next up, we have the gross lease. This is more straightforward. The landlord bundles everything, taxes, insurance, maintenance, all into one base rent.
Ah, so it's simpler.
It is. So if you have a 2,000 square foot office suite at $22 per square foot gross, your annual cost would be $44,000. Simple as that.
Easy to calculate.
Very easy. And these are common in multi-tenant office buildings. But of course, there's a catch.
There's always a catch. What is it?
That base rent. It usually includes a markup to cover the landlord's risk, maybe 15 to 20%.
To cover their costs and make sure they're covered for those expenses.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have the modified gross lease, kind of a hybrid.
Okay, middle ground.
Yeah. Landlord covers taxes and insurance, which Cara estimates at about $1.50 to $3 per square foot. But you pay utilities. That's about $1 to $2 per square foot. And you handle repairs inside your space Another deal dollars for 50 to $1 per square foot.
So you split some of the responsibility.
Exactly. So for a Rise Flex space, for example, at $19 per square foot, plus your $2 in tenant costs,
Yeah.
a 3,000 square foot space would cost you about $63,000 per year.
All right.
Now, these can be flexible, but sometimes it's not crystal clear who's responsible for what.
It's important to spell that out in detail.
It is. Now, let's talk about how those lease rates actually vary. Because remember, the average is $18 to $23 per square foot annually.
Right. But a lot of factors can influence that.
So many factors. First, location.
Mm.
Retail on Main Street, for example, that's prime real estate.
Mhm.
You're looking at $22 to $25 per square foot.
Premium location, premium price.
Exactly. Then you go over to South Tech Park for industrial. It's lower, $14.50 to $18 per square foot.
Makes sense.
Rise, for those flex spaces, falls somewhere in between $18 to $21.
Okay.
Then you've got the property itself. Older buildings, pre-2000, they might have lower base rents. And maybe you save $2 to $4 per square foot. But then you might have to put money into upgrading things like the HVAC system, which could cost you $5,000 to $15,000.
So there's a trade-off.
There is. And amenities also play a role. Offices with 5G capabilities, that might add $1 per square foot. Ample parking can boost those retail rates.
Features and amenities add value.
They do. Now let's make this real with some examples. A 2,500 square foot retail space in Copper Chase. Base rent is $22 plus $4.50 in in-and-end charges. That's $66,250 per year.
All right, so we're getting a feel for the actual numbers.
We are. An 1,800 square foot office in Indiana American, $21 per square foot gross. You're looking at $37,800 per year.
Okay.
And a 10,000 square foot industrial space in South Tech, $16 base rent plus $3 NNN. That comes out to $190,000 per year.
Got it. So the cost can really vary depending on your needs and the type of property.
For sure. But here's the thing. Don't forget the hidden costs.
Hidden costs, those are the ones that get you.
Right. So first, you've got CAM fees. That's common area maintenance. Think of things like snow removal, parking lot upkeep. Those can range from $2 to $5 to 50 cents per square foot.
Okay.
Then there's utilities. Can add another $1 to $3 per square foot. And if you're running your HVAC 24/7.
Yeah, that's going to be higher.
Oh, yeah. And then there's fit-out costs. That's getting the space ready for your business, customizing it. That can be a big range, $10 to $60 per square foot, depending on what you need.
Right, like if you need to build walls or add special lighting, that's going to add up.
It really does.
Yeah.
And even things like permits, signage, occupancy permits, those can be a few $100s right off the bat.
So you got to factor in those extra costs. They're not always obvious.
They're not. Now let's move on to lease terms. Duration, escalation, exit strategies.
Okay, the timeline of the lease, how the rent might increase over time.
Yeah, and what happens if you need to leave early? So lease durations, they can be all over the place. Short-term, 12 to 24 months. Think pop-up shops.
Right, short-term needs.
Midterm, 3 to 5 years. That's your most common. And then you have long-term, 7 to 15 years. Those are usually for those bigger anchor tenants.
Right, so choosing the right duration is going to depend on your business plan and how long you expect to be in that space.
Totally. Now, escalation clauses. These outline how your rent might increase over time. Fixed escalation, that's straightforward, maybe a 2% or 3% increase per year.
Okay, so predictable.
Predictable. So let's say your rent's $20 per square foot with a 3% annual increase. By the fourth year, you're paying $22.12.
Got it. And what's the other type of escalation?
Escalation tied to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That fluctuates with inflation, so it's less predictable.
Right, because inflation, who knows what it'll be in the future.
Exactly. In 2024, the CPI was 3.2%, which would mean a $0.64 per square foot increase.
Okay, so that's something to consider, whether you want that predictability or you're willing to take that risk with the CPI.
Definitely. Now, renewal options. These can be your friend.
Renewal options, okay. So like the option to extend the lease.
Exactly. A lot of leases include them, so you can extend maybe for another 3 to 5 years, maybe 1 to 3 times.
Right.
So you might see a clause that says you can renew at, let's say, $22 per square foot or the current market rate, whichever is lower.
That's good. That protects you a little bit.
It does. Then there's the right of first refusal, which means if a space next to yours opens up, you get the first dibs on leasing it.
It's really strategic, especially if you're thinking about expanding.
It is. Now, what happens if you need to break your lease early? That's where termination clauses come in.
Right, the exit strategy.
Exactly. These clauses spell out how much notice you need to give, what penalties you might face.
Okay.
So, for example, you might see something like 6 to 12 months notice, plus a penalty of 1 to 3 months rent. Yeah, and for a 2,500 square foot space, that could be $5,000 to $15,000.
That's not insignificant.
It's not. Now, subleasing, that's where you rent out your space to another business.
Right, to help cover your costs if you need to downsize or something.
Exactly. Cara says that's allowed about 70% of the time. So having those options can be a lifesaver if things change unexpectedly.
For sure.
Cara told me a story about a client of hers back in 2023. She saved them $10,000 in CAM fees just by carefully reviewing the lease agreement.
Wow. See, that's where expertise comes in.
Right. You can make a big
A
difference.
huge difference.
Okay, so let's say you're ready to start looking for your own commercial lease in Greenwood. Where do you even begin?
That's the big question.
Well, Cara has a 5-step plan for you. Step 1. Assess your business needs. First, think about how much space you actually need.
Right, square footage is key.
It is. For retail, it can be all over the map. 300 square foot pop-up to a 15,000 square foot anchor store.
Big range.
Huge range. For an office, a good rule of thumb is 100 square feet per person, plus a little extra for growth.
Okay.
And industrial, that really depends on your operation. Cara gave an example. 20,000 square feet for a business handling 50 pallets a day.
Right, so it really varies based on the type of business.
It does.
Hmm.
Now, location. This is critical too. Think about how much traffic you need.
Traffic.
Yeah. Is your business like a storefront in Copper Chase, where you need those 15,000 cars passing by every day?
Yeah.
Or is visibility less important, like in South Tech?
Makes sense. Foot traffic versus more destination-based businesses.
Exactly. Also, think about client access, proximity to highways if you're shipping goods.
Location can make or break a business.
Absolutely. And of course, you need a budget.
The all-important budget.
Right. Figure out what you can realistically afford for rent. Remember that $18 to $23 per square foot range,
Right.
plus those extra costs. CM, utilities, another $5 to $10 per square foot.
Okay.
And don't forget the upfront cost to get the space ready. For a 2,000 square foot office, Cara estimates anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000.
Depending on how much customization you need.
Exactly. Step 2, market research. You got to do your homework.
Right, gotta understand the market trends.
Yep. Use those online resources. LoopNet, at the time of this recording, it had 68 listings in Greenwood, including a 3,500 square foot flex space in Rise for $19 per square foot.
Okay, so you can actually see what's out there.
You can. Crexy, that's a good one for trends. For example, demand for flex space has grown by 10% since 2023.
Interesting.
And Property Shark, that can help you compare sale prices to lease rates.
Okay.
Now, stay up to date on the current market. Cara pointed out retail vacancy is 4.2%, rents are up 3%, industrial 6.5% vacancy, demand is up 5% thanks to e-commerce. Office vacancy is at 5%, and co-working is getting 20% more popular. But Cara says her real advantage is her network. Her connections get her access to properties before they're even listed publicly.
Oh, wow, that's insider access.
It is. She found a 4,000 square foot space in Copper Chase for a client at $19 per square foot, which was below the market rate of 22 tours.
That's huge. Having an agent with those connections, that's invaluable.
It really is. Okay, step 3, property tours.
So this is where you get to see the spaces in person.
Exactly. Cara suggests you have a checklist. First, access. Closest to I-65, public transportation. Then look at the structure. The roof. HVAC system, is it in a flood zone?
Important considerations.
And then layout. Does it work for your business? Remember, a 2,500 square foot space might only have 60% of that as usable space once you factor in columns and such.
Right, got to think about the actual usable area.
And lastly, check those extras. Parking, signage allowances, are there EV chargers? All those details.
It makes sense. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and overlook those practical details.
It is. Cara actually compared a Main Street office at $19 per square foot to a newer industrial building in South Tech at $17, highlighting those differences. And she told me a story about spotting a failing HVAC system during a tour, which would have cost her client $20,000 to replace.
Wow, good catch.
Right. That's experience. Okay, step 4, negotiation.
This is where it gets real.
It does. And Cara says your leverage depends on the market. Low vacancy, like the current 5.8% we have. Landlords are less likely to budge. But if it's over 10%,
You've got more room to maneuver.
more room. So what can you negotiate? Free rent, 1 to 6 months. TI allowance, that's tenant improvement allowance, helps you customize the space.
Okay.
Caps on SAM fees, limits on rent escalations, good renewal options. That cafe in Copper Chase, Cara got them 4 months free rent and a $15 per square foot TI allowance, a total value of $32,500.
Nice.
Right. She says her good relationships with landlords helped.
Relationships are key in this business.
They really are. Okay, step 5. Finalizing the deal. This is where you go through the lease agreement with a fine-tooth comb.
Every detail matters.
Every detail. Pay close attention to that termination clause. Notice period, penalties. The use clause is huge, especially for certain businesses like breweries, making sure what you want to do is actually allowed.
Right.
Then, who's responsible for maintenance? Roof repairs versus fixing something inside your space. Insurance requirements, how much liability coverage you need, that's important too.
Yeah, protecting yourself is crucial.
Absolutely. Cara actually revised a vague clause about structural repairs for a client to be crystal clear that the landlord was covering 100% of those costs. And in another deal in Rise, she got better terms that saved her client an estimated $18,000 over the lease term.
So it's worth having someone who knows what they're doing looking over that lease.
Absolutely. And ideally, have a lawyer review it too.
Always a good idea.
Okay, so why is Cara Conde considered Greenwood's top commercial real estate agent?
Yeah, what makes her stand out?
Well, 23 years in the business, over 500 leases brokered, she's seen it all in Greenwood.
That's a wealth of experience.
It is, and her negotiating skills are top-notch. She got a Main Street lease down from $24 to $20 per square foot and scored 5 months free rent, saving that client $35,000.
Wow. Those are the kind of results you want.
Right. And she knows Greenwood inside and out.
Yeah.
Zoning rules, landlord preferences, what's driving growth, especially around that I-65 interchange.
So it's not just about getting a deal done. It's about understanding the bigger picture and the future potential of the market.
Exactly. And it's more than just closing deals for Cara. Clients say she's a true partner.
Okay, so she goes the extra mile.
She does. She's known for predicting market shifts, advising on early lease renewals to lock in good rates. She even holds workshops to help business owners avoid common lease mistakes.
That's really going above and beyond.
It is. Okay, let's answer some of those common questions people have about Greenwood commercial leases.
Let's do it. I'm sure our listeners are curious.
Okay, first up, average cost. Cara reminded us, $18 to $23 per square foot for base rent.
Right, the ballpark figure.
But it varies by location, and those NNN costs, those are extra. For example, a 3,000 square foot lease in Copper Chase could cost you about $79,500 per year with those NNN fees added in, and fit-out costs can be all over the place. Cara says she can create custom cost estimates and find ways to save money.
So it's really worth getting personalized advice.
It is. Now, how do you find these properties?
Yeah.
Online platforms like LoopNet and Crexi are good starting points. And don't forget about signs on properties themselves. Sometimes local chambers of commerce have listings that aren't public yet.
Good to know.
But Cara says her secret weapon is her access to exclusive listings.
Makes sense. With her experience and connections.
Exactly. What types of properties are available? Well, we talk about the offices in Indiana American, retail in Copper Chase, industrial in South Tech, flex spaces in Rise. Cara is all about finding the right match for your business.
Matching the business to the right property, that's key.
Totally. Now, why hire a commercial real estate agent like Cara Conde? She pointed out the risks of going it alone, overpaying, getting hit with unexpected repairs. Her experience, her negotiation skills, that can save you a lot of money, and her Greenwood knowledge is priceless.
It's tempting to think you can do it all yourself, but there's a lot of value in having that expert guidance.
There is. Next question. Typical lease terms. Cara broke down short-term, mid-term, long-term leases, gave some examples of the cost.
Okay.
And she stressed her ability to negotiate flexible terms for different situations.
Because one size doesn't fit all.
Nope. Last but not least, what to watch out for in those lease agreements.
The fine print.
The fine print, exactly. Things like uncapped CAM fees, unclear use descriptions, who's responsible for repairs, what happens if you default on the lease.
Right. Those are all potential pitfalls.
They are. Cara gave examples of how she's helped clients avoid those problems by carefully reviewing and revising those tricky parts of the agreement.
So having that expert eye looking out for you is really important.
It really is. Okay, so to wrap this up, Greenwood, Indiana, it's a vibrant commercial real estate market.
It sounds like it.
We've looked at over 4.2 million square feet of space. But commercial leases, they can be tricky, and having the right expert can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Someone who understands the intricacies of the market and the lease agreements.
Exactly. And if you're serious about finding the perfect space in Greenwood and navigating those leases with confidence, Cara Conde is the one to talk to.
She sounds like the ultimate guide.
She really is. Her ability to decode those leases, help you cut costs, and find the perfect space for your business, it's unmatched.
Great resource, too.